Pour 146, 146. Nays contre 180, 180.
Je déclare la motion rejetée.
The motion defeated.
Well, there it was. A moment, well, not quite historic, but almost. The vote was a confidence-testing motion on a conservative motion to establish a committee to investigate It was a confidence motion declared by the Liberals, and guess what? It did not pass. What happens now? Where does the investigation go? Who won? Who lost? Let's find out. The press gallery is here. Bob Fife, the Globe and Mail's Ottawa bureau chief, is here. We will have Susan Smith, the co-founder of Blue Sky Strategy Group, in a minute. Tom Mulcair, though, is joining us, the CTV political analyst. Nik Nanos, the founder of Nanos Research, is also here. Man, we're going to get a lot of people joining us. Let me start with Dr. Fife. All right, I've just given you an honorary doctorate there. I know Nick's already got one. All right, Doc Fife, who won, who lost? What do you make of all this?
Well, I think the Canadian people won because we're not into an election right now. I think the NDP lost. It showed their inherent weakness as a party, that they anytime the Liberals put a gun to their head, they bow down and ask for mercy. And this is exactly what happened today. But I don't think this has been a heroic moment for any of the parties. I think the Conservatives overplayed their hand in wanting this a special committee that they wanted to call an anti-corruption committee to be set up. This is this controversy, which is serious. It should have been dealt with in the Ethics Committee, of which the opposition has the chair and has control of. And for some reason, the Conservatives decided to go a different route and ended up backfiring on them. And certainly it hasn't helped the Liberals any either. It shows disrespect for Parliament, as we've seen from weeks of their filibustering so that Canadians can't find out what went on with the controversy, including providing documents that were demanded of them and then having whole sections of it all blacked out. Even the law clerk of the House of Commons has said this is just unacceptable.
All right, so Susan Smith is going to join us, but let me swing over to Tom Mulcair as well. So that's Bob Fife's the pox on all their houses. That may be true, but who has more pox and who has less pox, Tom?
Well, I think that for today, a lot of Canadians are giving a big thumbs up to Jagmeet Singh for saying, this is nuts. There's no way we're going into an election in the middle of a pandemic with the numbers we've got in Ontario and Quebec. It would just be insane. So I think that most Canadians agree with that. Long term might be tricky, and I agree with Bob Fife. I think it might be quite tricky for Mr. Singh because you have to look at the history of this, and a lot of people in the Liberal Party know this history. Same thing happened when Pierre Trudeau lost his majority. He made kissy face with David Lewis's NDP, was friends with them for a year and a half. David Lewis backed him up. All of a sudden, Mr. Trudeau wheeled around, aimed his guns at the NDP's votes, got a lot of their seats back. And the same thing could happen now because Mr. Trudeau's lines are being written for him. Wow, Mr. Singh thinks I'm okay. You can't risk having the Conservatives back of all things, so you got to come and vote for me. That's going to be the play in the next campaign. So I think that Mr. Singh and the people who advised him did quite well today, short term. Longer term, I think it might play tricks on them.
Nick, on the polls, and then I'll swing back to Susan, but Nick, how does this play out? It seemed like the Liberals didn't mind if this went all the way. What do the polling numbers say about this, and how do you think this plays out?
Well, the latest Nanos polling suggests that the Liberals have about a 6-point advantage. And what's interesting, in the last 4 weeks, the big movement has been away from the New Democrats towards the Liberals and allowed the Liberals to have that advantage. So right now there's a negative trajectory for the NDP. But, you know, Evan, if I could add a thing, I think the big losers, everyone was a loser today, including the Liberals, even though they avoided the confidence vote. The fact of the matter is that when we do polling, Canadians are worried about the pandemic. They're worried about their jobs and the economy. They're worried about whether healthcare will be there when they need it. And what we've seen today are politicians bickering over the names of committees and jockeying for political gain. And I would say that for average Canadians, they're probably disappointed in all of the federal parties right now.
Susan, the Liberals decided to make this a confidence vote. Look, they clearly stared down the NDP, who broke and supported them. Now they don't have this committee, but Is this really what the Liberals want to do to show that they're working with Parliament and a minority Parliament, playing this kind of nuclear option like this? Do the Liberals really have a win here, Susan?
I think actually it's the Conservatives that are playing the nuclear option. If you read the motion for that committee, it was torqued up, dynamited up. It looked like one of Wile E. Coyote's, wagons on a cartoon. There was so much in there that the Liberals really, from a minority government perspective, had no choice but to call it a confidence vote. I do think Canadians are the winners. Nick's got the polling numbers to back it up. Canadians are concerned about their jobs. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about whether or not they have supports. For the next 2 weeks, there's a whole bunch of them concerned about Halloween for their kids. They're concerned about school. This is not what they didn't want to go to an election, but the Liberals had every right to be able to go to one if that was what the House decided. Look, I think Aaron O'Toole has huge egg on his face. He is the one that torqued this up. He's the one that showed how he's going to play politics in the kind of a dirty, nasty, partisan way. And he didn't put the priorities of Canadians first. So I think Canadians are the winners because there is no election. I think Mr. O'Toole's a loser. I think Mr. Singh has lost some of his bargaining leverage, like his ultimate bargaining leverage, but he and Elizabeth May and the Greens and the Independents did the right thing today.
Bob, do you buy that? Because, the opposition, even the NDP who supported the Liberals, said they prorogued, they filibustered. Do you think the Liberals really do come out? What do you make of what Susan said?
I absolutely do not think the Liberals look very good on this. They have been hiding and covering up something in those wee documents that we do not know. They have been filibustering efforts by the opposition parties to get answers on over $500 million of spending that was going to buddies of the Trudeau family. And the fact of the matter is, when the committee asked for a slew of documents, big chunks of it, all blacked out, of which the nonpartisan law clerk of the House of Commons said is unacceptable. I agree with Susan that the Conservatives overplayed their hand, but the Liberals do not look very good here. It looks like they are hiding something that I would imagine is very embarrassing for the Prime Minister, or they wouldn't go to such lengths.
Yeah.
Look, Bob,
I
understand that there are people. Sorry, I think there are people.
Hold on,
that are
let me get Tom. Hold on, can I get Tom in there?
I think that Mr.
Let me just
Trudeau
jump. Tom wants to jump in. Go for it.
I think that Mr. Trudeau was sincerely ready to go to an election, because Bob is right. There's obviously something in the We Charity scandal, and there are a couple of others, one involving nomination of judges, another involving medical equipment around the pandemic. These are things that they don't want to have to talk about. The other thing is, too, Aaron O'Toole is showing himself to be rather stronger than anybody had suspected. His press conferences are solid. He's solid. And I don't think we can do like Susan did before and blame him for overplaying the hand. That had Pierre Poilievre's fingerprints all over it. I think it makes it easier now for Aaron O'Toole to say, you see, that's not the way we're going to play politics. So he wins on that. Mr. Trudeau also knows that he's going to have to present a budget if he waits longer. So these are all things that would have argued in favor of Mr. Trudeau wanting to go sooner rather than later. Now he gets to fight another day. We'll see what the springtime looks like. For now, I don't think that anybody comes out ahead long term, and we're going to see how the pandemic goes.
Right.
If we get a vaccine, then people will be feeling very differently about Mr. Trudeau and the spending and when they see the budget numbers.
Nick, just close it up, Nick, because I wonder, do the Liberals have to now wait till the spring? Or because what becomes the issue? Is it, ethics, or is it still pandemic? What's the big issue?
Actually, it's got to be both. And polling that we did on the week controversy when it first broke, Canadians overwhelmingly support a full examination and inquiry into this. But they don't want it to be the fixation of the government, because they know that all of the parties have to work together to fight the pandemic and to keep our economy steady. So it's not one or the other. Canadians want both.